it's Tiffany Lorraine, the Resilient Mother, with another episode of the Resilient Mother podcast. This month, we're talking about mastering your unique resilience, and I have found another exciting guest for you today. Wendela is here, and she's an expert around autism, which is a subject I feel is unique and special to explore. So thank you for joining us. Wendela, thank you for being here. Will you please tell us more about you?
Hi, it's so great to be here, Tiffany. Thanks for inviting me. Me, in a nutshell, I grew up for 20 years. For 20 years, I was a special ed teacher. And then for the next 20 years, I was a school psychologist, behavior analyst, autism specialist in the schools. And then I took early retirement, although after 40 years, you don't think of it as early. But I retired thinking I would write a book and maybe see a few consultation clients on the side. I had been widowed when my husband was 54. He had a heart attack. Our kids at that time were in their late teens, early 20s. So we learned a little bit about resilient firsthand. But now, that was back in 2009. So in 2016, I retired. And instead of writing one book, I now am just finishing my 8th book. I've got one coming out in December. And instead of just seeing a few clients, I ended up, because there's such a need, I ended up being the CEO of a nationwide group practice, adult autism assessment and services. And there's been such a need for people who wonder if they might be autistic. So that's what I'm doing.
I love that. How would you define resilience as it pertains to autism?
Oh, when I hear the word resilience, 3 things pop into my head: a toy, a song, and a study. And the toy, back when I was young, they had these inflatable clown dolls with round weighted bottoms, and you could punch that clown and it would fall over and bounce right back up. I don't know if they still have those toys. Yeah. But no matter how many times you hit it, it would bounce back up. And of course, we hope nobody hits moms. But we also know that there's a lot of tough things, and that resilience is bouncing back up. And the song that comes to my mind is, I get knocked down, but I get up again. You're never going to keep me down.
Great.
And I think that's like a theme song for so many mothers. We do, life throws us curves, and we do keep bouncing back. And the study about resilience that I remember is really about children. And of course, moms were children once. And the main idea of the study was that they looked at a lot of kids who had really a lot of trauma and neglect and terrible childhoods. And they watched them over time. And some of them, as you might imagine, did not have a successful life. They might have ended up in prison or whatever, And some of them became very, very successful with the same background. So they said, what's different about the ones who made it? And they each had at least one person who loved them unconditionally, who cared about them, who thought that they were great. And so often that's a mom, sometimes a grandma, sometimes a teacher. But one person makes such a difference. So even if moms are raising kids in difficult circumstances, and being autistic is perhaps a difficult circumstance, knowing that unconditional love means so much to your child's future. And I loved reading that story when it came out. I think it gives a lot of us hope.
Well, and I face life as a single mom now. I never pictured that I would. And my son in particular, I'm the only parent he knows. And that really hurt my heart in a lot of ways, because he didn't ask for that. It's not fair and by any means. But I went to the local psychology department at the university, and we did family therapy, and so I could figure out how to adjust and how to be the best parent I could be for my family in this new chapter we found ourselves in. And especially for him, I'm like, how do I do this? Like, I'm father and mother. I never expected to be that. And can this work? What can I do? And I found out exactly what you just said. As long as the child has one very loving, attentive parent, they have better chances of doing well. And that really brought me a lot of peace, because then it felt like the efforts I'm making at least are going to make a difference. And then I found in situations with my daughters, even though we're divorced on that side of things with them, it still is the same principle. It's that one-on-one time with them. It's showing up for them. It's being there for them. And that makes all the difference. And I hope that brings some moms some peace, because I think we overcomplicate things today and we compare with Instagram moms, and we're not giving ourselves enough credit for what we are doing right. We're too focused on what we lack and what we see in someone else. And today's episode is about being unique. It doesn't matter what anybody else is doing for your child or for your family. It's about your uniqueness and celebrating it and living it, whatever that looks like for you. And it is going to be different, and that's a good thing.
That is so true, Tiffany. I love your story. And I think so many people hear that and are encouraged, because certainly there is no small number of single moms raising kids. There are many, many families like that. So it's so important that you're getting this message out. The women that
a single mom who's dealing with children who have disabilities is something I hadn't thought of before, but I've come across now with clients and different things. So I really admire that you did that. And you said your children were older, so it was a little bit easier, but still all the same, being a mother who has children who have special needs takes another level of love and dedication. And I really admire that. I'd love to hear more about that and how you built your resilience through it.
Well, my children were not identified with their disabilities when they were born. So we had a very typical, early childhood those days. There were, I think every family just grows together. My late husband was autistic, didn't know about it until our youngest was getting diagnosed. But that meant, since two of our kids are autistic and the other one has other physical challenges, some arthritis and heart and lung stuff. But in a family of 5, the majority were autistic. And even though we didn't have a label yet, there was a normalcy. It's like, well, this is just the way people are. And I think with resiliency, whatever happens, it's like, oh, well, this is how it is now. This is what it is. And the resilience seems to be kind of innate. Most of us don't plan for resilience. I mean, you were smart. You went and found out. But some of us, it's what we find out what happened. When David died, it's like, I didn't really have a choice to just quit on life. Having kids is a blessing in that way, because we were a unit, we were a family, we were all grieving together, and then all growing together. In my work, I've met so many women, many of the moms, who didn't know that they were autistic. They were misidentified or ignored or told, oh, well, you made eye contact with me, so you can't be autistic. And of course, they should have asked, did you teach yourself to make eye contact? Is it difficult? Do you have a system for counting in your head? I'm going to look at the eyes for 3 seconds, and I'm going to glance away for 2 seconds. If you have a whole system for eye contact, you might be autistic, because people in the neuromajority, I never even think about eye contact. It's just not something that is part of our daily to-do list, is monitor how I make eye contact with other humans. So it can be challenging. But I also learned that the whole realm of parenthood, becoming a mother when you're autistic, has its own challenges. There are lots and lots of books out there for parents who have autistic children. I mean, there's a ton. If you Google, you will find a lot of books. One of them is mine. But there hadn't been a book for autistic parents. So that's why I wrote Parenting While Autistic. It's part of the 4-book series, the Adulting While Autistic series. So we've got Independence While Autistic, Dating While Autistic, Relating While Autistic, and Parenting While Autistic is the most recent one to come out. because it's harder if you have sensory issues. And many autistic people feel things, just the physical sensations of the world, so much more deeply, more intensely. Which, if it's something good, it's like, that's great. If when you smell a rose, you get this huge impact from the smell of the rose, it's like wonderful. But also that means the sound of people's silverware touching each other might be a huge, horrible, you can't move, your phone from ordinary sounds, and touch too. You might just have a tactile aversion where you don't want too much touch. Well, if suddenly you have a person growing inside your body, and moving and kicking, it's like that is, I think that's an unusual thing for every mother. The first time you get pregnant, those feelings are new.
Definitely.
But if autism is there, it can make it much harder to cope with life in general. And then when you have a baby and nursing and holding the baby, and the baby needs a lot of touch, it can be too much for some moms. It can be, if you have a partner, when they come home, it's like, please, you hold the baby now. I can't, and don't touch me.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I suppose that would also cause some postpartum depression for some who don't know that that's the issue that they're having, because they would wonder why they're having that different experience than someone else. So I think I've never heard of that before. That's very interesting.
It can be, I think self-esteem and self-confidence takes a huge hit. One woman, I'll just call her Mary. That's not her real name, but she shared with me that she used to scream. She had a 5-year-old girl when I met her. She would scream at that little girl, and she was a loving mother. She adored that child. That was not who she was as a person, but just about every day she would find herself screaming at her daughter. And she went to so much therapy and anger management things. She thought she just had a terrible, terrible anger management problem that was it was resistant to treatment because nothing worked. And then she found out she was autistic and had been autistic all along. And as she learned about autism and sensory things, she realized she had a sensory problem, not an anger problem. For her, if there are more than one sound going on at the same time, that's incredibly stressful for her. So if there's like the radio in one room, the TV in another room, kids playing with toys, an airplane going over, and then her daughter would come up to her and kind of get in her face and start asking her a bunch of questions. And that would just trigger her, and she would be screaming, not because she was actually angry with her daughter, who was just being a kid, but because her system could not handle the overload. And once she knew, she just made a new rule. From now on, only one sound source in this house. If you want the radio on, you turn the TV off. And if you want to talk to me, you first turn off the other sound source. Just turn off the TV or mute it, and then come up and you have my full attention. And she never yelled at her daughter again once she knew what a plan in place. Just for her, the knowledge, the awareness that she was just a unique mom. Her sensory system was not typical. But knowing what it was gave her the tools to be able to create an environment that supported her so that she wasn't taking it out on her child.
I love how you just said that, creating the environment, that she had control of some things and could change it. And I also love her story because she didn't give up. I think that can be the problem. Sometimes we know something's off and we give up after a few explorations of what we think the solution is. And she didn't. She knew that she wanted to change that behavior and figure out why it was happening. And I love how that story brought it all together, because that's really educational in the fact that not everyone would realize that yelling could be from a sensory thing. That's a trigger. And I think sometimes we automatically think, oh, it's from trauma, hence the anger management, or it's from something else. So this is a new perspective on, it can be sensory overload that triggers you. And that also, I think, creates some understanding of what autism is for others, that they can't handle too much. And so when you have someone who like can't handle you talking and the phone and the different things, like I'm from a different world of where I think I might have ADD, where I can handle multiple things going on at once. And so that is a whole different thing I'm dealing with. That almost sounds like the opposite. And so if you have two people that had that in the same household, you are going to have to create a very unique environment for all the individuals involved. But first you have to explore and know those needs, have that awareness, and find out what that uniqueness is in each person, and then find the solutions for it.
Yeah. Now, another mom that I talked to, she knew that her trigger was the sound of silverware hitting each other, metal on metal, and scraping, and in their entire house, they had all bamboo silverware. They did not have any metal silverware in that house. The appliances were, heat plastic. The things they ate with were bamboo. And she just created a household where that couldn't happen. There was nothing in her household where metal could touch metal and set her off. But eating in a restaurant was a challenge because one time she was sitting there with her family, her kids, and at the next table, a man had this habit where every single time he would fix himself a bite, he would then scrape off the fork and the knife against each other before he went to cut another bite. He was scraping it every single time. And it's like her senses were on fire. She was frozen. She said, what could I do? I couldn't ask him to not do that. You can't ask strangers to change their behavior when it's typical for him. And she couldn't just leave. Our kids were eating. And she had to just kind of clench her body, close her eyes, and just control her breathing and do whatever she could to just hold it together until that sound was gone. But knowing that it was her autism, I think helped her make it so that she could have a restaurant experience with her kids. They don't do it often, but you want to give your kids the experiences that other kids have if you can.
Yeah. And that takes a level of awareness, and then it takes taking responsibility for your triggers. I think some people get triggered and they want to blame something for it. And really they're yours. They're your problem and you have to deal with them. There's nobody that can fix them for you. It can really cause problems in relationships when we do the blame game with triggers. And, you could have easily blamed that man. He didn't know what he was doing. He didn't know it was affecting you. So it's not outside of you, it's inside of you when a trigger happens, and it's your job to go figure out and do the work to know how to deal with it properly and to make that change. But if you're not aware of something, you have to have that honesty with yourself of, I'm doing this, I don't want this to be the case, I can change it. And I think it's important that you don't think I'm stuck yelling at my child, or I'm stuck not going to restaurants, or I have to be limited now. There are no limitations other than the ones we put on ourselves. It's a matter of doing the work and finding solutions that we can. And they may be unique. They may be different. They may be bamboo. Like, you just have to explore.
And there's like little loop earplugs you can wear that doesn't cut out all the sound, so you can still have conversation, but it kind of softens the rest of the world. When I got some of those for my autistic kids, I thought, well, I'm going to get some too. And now every time I go to the movies, I put those in because those movies are loud. I don't think movie theaters need to be that loud, but that's my response to the loudness is my issue. So I'll just put in my loops, and then I can enjoy the movie.
I'm loving hearing all these different unique solutions. I'm assuming there's unique aspects of Asperger's in different people too. Like everybody has something a little bit different. Can you speak to that a little bit? Some of the solutions around that you found?
There are a lot of unique differences. And you mentioned Asperger's, which a while back, autism was broken down into several different labels, and that was one of them. That's still true in the United Kingdom, Australia, other places still use that terminology. In America now, we just call it all autism spectrum disorder, which really ranges from someone who might never learn to speak using words, who might never learn to take care of their base needs and will be cared for throughout their lifetime, to people who might be a professor, have a lot of high education, CEO of a company, maybe they make computers, who knows? But there's such a range of what autism is that it is unique. It's different for everyone. And some of the issues are certainly sensory. And knowing what your sensory things are. Some people need proprioceptive input. Proprioceptive is the deep muscle and joint feeling. So you can get that feeling from if you walk really firmly and pound your feet on the floor, you kind of feel that pressure up through your leg bones. And for those who like that sort of, if that helps them self-regulate, they're going to do that. But then they might realize, oh, everybody's hearing me stomp my feet and it sounds like I'm angry or something. What can I do to get that feeling? Some people have a little trampoline in their own house and they just bounce on that trampoline every morning to kind of help them self-regulate. Some people jog. That's a very normal thing. I can't say the word normal without the air quotes, but jogging will give that proprioceptive feedback in a way that many other people use. For some, they need pressure and they might want a weighted blanket or to just buy like a vest that's a size too small and just get snugged into something that feels tight and cozy. And of course, the auditory. A lot of people have a lot of trouble with sounds, and there might be specific sounds. So having earbuds, noise-canceling headsets are very helpful. And if there are things that help people, because sensory is not only sensory avoiding like those sounds, but also sensory seeking, like that proprioceptive input. And for some, it's tactile. I know I met one woman who has like a collection of almost 50 squishmallows. It's a kind of toy. It's a very, very soft, squishy.
Yep, my kids like those.
Yeah. Squishmallows. Those are great. And they're not just for kids, Anybody who wants to hug something soft or just rub something really soft, why not? You're never really too old for something that helps you self-regulate. That if you're stressed and you can squeeze that and touch it, why not? Some people who have a real problem with odor. My son cannot walk down the grocery store aisle where they keep the detergent because just getting close to it, even though it's all in its containers, he can smell it and it just, he can't handle it. So if we're shopping together, he'll just go around and say, I'll meet you over there and just, find his way back.
This is so fascinating to me because I teach in my coaching around energy and presence using your senses, and that we all have a favorite scent, we have a favorite taste, we have a favorite sound, and we should implement those into our day. So it's interesting to hear kind of opposite of like autism is an adhesion to one of these senses that we have and being aware of what triggers you. It's kind of the opposite thought process I had on the senses. And I hadn't thought of it that way because we all have smell is really tied to memory and it can be triggering for a lot of people. Taste can be as well. That's why when we like taste something like maybe a grilled cheese, for an example, or something, it brings us back to Sundays with dad and his grilled cheese and tomato soup or whatnot. Like there's a lot of power in our senses that I think we take for granted in our very fast-paced world, in our digital world. And it's so important that we get more grounded in those senses. And that way we can also be sensitive to other people. I mean, that's what makes us human. We're across the screen right now. So it's really easy not to have the complete sensory experience, for lack of a better way of putting it. And that's probably really helpful for some with autism, actually, to let this be the world for them. And it gives us options to connect with people around the world. But it's so important to have that live in-person sensory experience as well, and know how to use our senses to our advantage, and that in the way that you're talking about.
And the way that you use senses and sensory experience is also very applicable to this because, well, like my youngest was still in school and had an odor aversion where certain smells were just bad, but other smells were very good, like cinnamon. So I suggested, mom doesn't always know what's best, but I said, what if you put a few drops of cinnamon oil on a cotton ball, put it in a Ziploc baggie, and then when you're at school, if there's like somebody's wearing perfume or somebody's, didn't shower after gym, you can pull it out and just kind of sniff that baggie and get that hit of the positive smell.
Yeah.
But what she told me was she was not going to do that because that's what glue sniffers do. If you are at school and you pull out a baggie and start sniffing it, you'll probably get sent to the office for, sniffing glue at school, and then find out that it wasn't glue. It was cinnamon all along. Yeah, she educated me. But some people, you can still buy cloth handkerchiefs like in days of old before Kleenex. If you get a cloth handkerchief and soak it in water that has a few drops of an essential oil or vanilla or something that you enjoy, and then let it dry, it'll hold on to some of that scent.
Yes.
And it looks more typical and not so druggy to just pull out a handkerchief and, either hold it to your face or, be able to inhale the positive smell that really makes you feel good and ward off the, negative smells that will give you a headache.
And I think that comes down to, like, we have positive and negative to choose every day. It's a choice.
So true.
We can always find the positive or we can always find the negative. It doesn't matter if we have autism or not. We can wake up in the morning and the minute we have a negative thought, if we give into it, that can set our whole day. And if we try to blame something outside of ourselves, like, oh, that dog in the neighborhood was barking too loud last night or something else. I mean, we have like circumstances around us, but we still control us and still find the positive in that thing. We could turn it around and say, well, that dog was keeping the neighborhood safe. I mean, there's always a way to turn it positive. And it doesn't have to be in a Pollyanna way, like overly like positive, but you can at least turn your mind in that direction, no matter what circumstance you face. And I think that's really being resilient, because that's an understanding of life is going to be positive and negative. There are going to be hills and valleys. There's going to be mountains to climb, and there's going to be down times. That's part of the human experience. And we need to embrace that as part of our humanity, because that's what gives us the breadth of character that we have, is experiencing those lows and those highs. So when we're in a high, we can appreciate it. And when we're in a low, we know we're going to get through it. And I think that applies to anything, but it's uniquely how you get through it. You're a unique individual. What that look like, your journey, your family, what you face is going to be different. And that's what we're talking about this month, is embracing that uniqueness and finding your unique resilience, whatever that looks like.
And also to be as kind to yourself as you would be to someone else. Because a lot of moms, we take it on ourselves. So it's good to not be angry at that dog and say, oh, that dog is ruining my life because he barks every morning. But at the same time, to not turn it against yourself and say, oh, I'm so weak. Everybody else just rolls with the punches and they don't mind a dog barking. And what's wrong with me that I can't handle these ordinary life things? But to be able to say, hey, if you're autistic, I'm doing great for someone who's autistic. Or I am doing so much better than I might be doing. And to really love ourselves. I know that's what you are all about too, is to give ourselves the grace and the forgiveness and the love that we would give to our children. Because,
Absolutely.
If you think about it, that adorable child, they deserve to have a mom who feels good about themselves and who models, I'm okay. even if things are not perfect, I'm still okay. Your child deserves that.
Absolutely. And my experience during my pregnancy was that I wanted my child to only feel positive emotions. And I happened to be taking self-compassion at the time of lockdown and everything through my university. And it was such a blessing because it gave me that ability to realize all the power is within to do that, to do exactly what you're talking about. It's not when I get married again someday. It's not when I get the degree. It's not when I get an accolade. That's not even who I am. Who I am is this very internal world and this eternal being. And so is my child. And so during that pregnancy, I learned all of these skills to keep it a positive experience for him and celebrate him. And the funny thing now is a couple of years later, it's like, am I still doing those same things? I was doing it out of love for him, but I need to still do those same things for myself. And I think that's where we lose that balance as moms sometimes, as we get so focused on doing things for the kids. But we still need to do those same things for ourselves, is what I found. That self-care, that self-compassion, that grace, just being able to be like, hey, I'm sorry, mommy had a moment. I'm learning too. I'm human too. I've never done this before. I've never had a kid like you before. We're going to figure this out.
That just reminds me of a toothpaste issue I had when my kids were younger. Part of my mindset was being a mom means if you buy a new brand of toothpaste and everybody hates it, you have to use that toothpaste until it's all gone. I had that. It's like, that's what moms do. They take on the worst toothpaste. And I realized at one point, and sometimes money was tight when the kids were small, but it's really no more expensive to buy 5 different tubes of toothpaste so that each one has their own and it'll last 5 times longer. The initial outlay might be more, but over time it's like no difference. Let every single person in the family have a different brand of toothpaste if that's what they need. And so that was something I had to learn. And then I didn't have to be the one, using up all the worst toothpaste.
Well, I think there's appropriate ways to do that. And then some people can take it to the extreme. I have the story of my grandma who burnt herself out to the point she didn't want to cook anymore because she would take a cake and she would make that cake for every meal for each child. So like if it was a cake, for example, part of the cake would be chocolate with no frosting. Part of the cake would be chocolate with nuts. And part of it would be chocolate with that's a lot. And with 3 kids, my mom had 6. I'm like, that would be a lot. So I think there's definitely a boundary around that as well, of making sure it's within the parameters of what makes sense for your family and doesn't take you to an extreme where you're going to burn out. So when I grew up with my grandma, I never knew she cooked. I never knew she had like this secret like cheesecake recipe that was amazing, or that she had this lasagna recipe unless somebody else in the family made it. And I just felt like I was missing out as her grandchild because I wanted to experience that from her. And so I think decide where your love makes the most sense for your child. Meet their unique needs, but at the same time, if you want them to be resilient, you can't meet every single need. You have to let them experience life and be there as support in some circumstances. And I'm wondering how that's true with autism, because they still have to learn independence. Even if you have a disability, your child still has to have their own agency at some point. There's so much you can do to keep them safe, and then it's up to them after a certain point.
Yeah. And, the phrase, choose your battles. I'm a pacifist, so I don't like battles, and I haven't found a different way of saying that, but not everything is equally important. And certainly when I was raising kids, there are some things like, okay, this is not negotiable. Everybody has to do this, but there are other things that's like, it could be, you could say, I need something different. Okay. Now, if I had known that they were autistic when they were younger, I think I would have made different choices. That, we sometimes regret the things we didn't do more than the things we did.
Sure.
And if I had known that their sensory systems were just very different from mine, I'm thinking of what is it like for me being in this world. And they were not like me. I mean, in some ways we're all alike, but with autism, you do have to take into account that unique person and what their needs are. They might need sometimes to be catered to. I remember when my oldest was very, like, pretty small, and we were having little cookies after dinner, and I said everybody could have 4 cookies because they were small. And he said no, could he have 5? And I said no, you can have 4. And he says, I can't have 4. And it's like, you can have 4, but you can't have 5. And there was a little back and forth. And finally, he just went, okay, I'll have 3. And he just took 3 cookies, and I love cookies. And in that moment, I thought, wow, it wasn't the cookies, it was the number 4. So the next time we were going to have cookies, like the next night, and it was going to be 4, I did give him 5 that night, because the night before he had 3. And
Interesting.
I didn't know much about what that meant, but I did know, well, this is different, and it's important to him in a way that I didn't get, but that clearly it was important to him.
So you can have an aversion to a number in autism, or was it even versus odds, or?
I don't even know. There's so many things in autism, but yeah, you can have, ideas can be real. One woman, Rosie King, she's got YouTubes, but I saw her in a TV. She's in England. When she was a teenager, I saw her make a video about her Asperger's, because in England they call it that. And she was sharing that when she goes to put on shoes, to choose what shoes to wear to school, she feels really sad for the shoes that didn't get chosen, because now they're going to be sad and lonely. Aww. And don't worry, I will choose you tomorrow. But objects can take on a life, wow, and be meaningful, and in a way that most of us don't really think about. And of course, there's nothing wrong with that. Why not have a relationship with your shoes as you might with your pet dog? Oh, I'm sorry, I have to leave you to go to school today, Fluffy. I'll see you after school. And it's just kind of unique things that we wouldn't think about until they tell us, this is what's going on for me. They might
love that
world inside that we don't always know.
And that's just celebrating the unique individual. And then we've got to understand whatever it is they're dealing with, whether it's ADD, mental health, autism, or just that they have a certain personality that's different from ours. One of my favorite books is The Child Whisperer by Carol Tuttle, that talks about how there's 4 different personalities, and how you deal with those personalities is important. And overall, the goal is to let our children and individuals live their unique truth and to honor it the best that we can, because that's when people can thrive. And that's the goal for all of us. And this podcast too is about mothers be resilient so they can thrive. Happy mom, happy children, happy homes. If mom ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. So that is the overall goal. Well, I'm so excited. We're actually going to have you on again in January, and we're going to dive deeper into awareness. I'm excited about that. Your book that you were talking about, can you mention that again? Because it came out earlier this month in December.
December 5th, it came out. It's called Parenting While Autistic.
Nice.
And it's anywhere, that you get your books, online, Barnes & Noble, ask at your local independent bookstore, or ask your librarian, I don't care where you read it.
Just read it.
I'll tell you a little bit about the books that I write. For every chapter or every issue that we talk about, it starts with, stuff, strategies, description, like words, stuff. But then I create fictional characters to illustrate each of those. So, and that's fun for me. So each of these characters deals with that issue in a unique way. And as you're reading it, you might say, oh, that one wouldn't work for me. Oh, but this one, that's what I need. And then at the end of every chapter, there's always a section written by actually autistic people, parents,
Nice.
for one, because I'm not autistic. So, I mean, being married, parenting in my work, I hire many autistic clinicians because they get it. But I'm not autistic, so I always want every chapter to have some words of wisdom from an actually autistic person. But that's kind of the format of the book. There'll be some facts, there'll be some stories, and then there'll be some words from autistic people.
I love that format. It really makes it a way that you can really take it in and also go, well, if they did it, so can I. And that's what I love about true stories and biographies, is seeing that we as a humanity overcome all sorts of obstacles in resilient ways. And we can help each other celebrate that and develop those skill sets by sharing our stories and sharing those that we've learned. So thank you for sharing with us today. If people want to find you, did they find you through the book, or are there other places they could find to work with you?
I've got a couple of websites. The one for my author website is WendelaWhitcombMarsh.com. It's like my three names all strung together. And it'll probably be written here somewhere where you can see it. So WendelaWhitcombMarsh.com is my author site. It's got my books. And then if you know somebody who thinks they might be autistic or who is and wants life coaching or counseling related to autism, it's adultautismassessment.com. Again, that's all one word, adultautismassessment.com.
Thank you so much for being here. And thank you, our listeners. We appreciate you so much. If you're looking for a coach, here you go. If you're looking for some good reading and a way to serve in the autistic world, or just to gain a better understanding, it's affecting more people. It's even in my own family. I'd like to know more about it. So this would be a great way to dive deeper into that subject and find ways to serve those around you. All right. I believe in you. Believe in yourself. God bless. And we will see you in our next episode.